Billionaire catches black driver dancing with his paralyzed daughter. What happened shocked everyone. The Whitmore estate, nestled in the golden folds of Northern California hills, didn't merely sit atop the world. It floated above it, suspended in a dream of glass, chrome, and perfectly trimmed vineyards. To the outside eye, it was perfection. But inside the sprawling home, behind windows that caught every ounce of sunset, but none of its warmth, Grace Whitmore, 18 and motionless from the waist down, felt like a ghost in a home that had forgotten how to breathe. It had been 13 months since the accident, the one no one in the house dared to name. 13 months since the fall, the rehab, the lawsuits, and the hush that followed, as if silence could scrub away the truth. Grace had gone from being a promising ballet dancer, bold, agile, radiant, to someone whose world ended where her hips met the wheelchair. Her father, Alexander Whitmore, a billionaire whose entire life revolved around control, efficiency, and legacy, had not been in the city when it happened. He had arrived on a private jet 20 hours later with no idea what to say, and still hadn't figured it out. He had built empires, but he couldn't rebuild his daughter. Enter Jalen Carter, a 29-year-old driver, newly hired by the Whitmore staff through a discreet agency. Quiet, sharp-eyed, polished in uniform, but casual in conversation. On paper, he was overqualified to be a driver, former dancer, part-time youth mentor, studied kinesiology before dropping out for reasons he didn't share. Grace had noticed it right away. "You move differently," she had said the second day, when he helped transfer her from the SUV after an appointment. "Not like the others." He had glanced at her, smiled. "Old habits. My feet don't like being still too long." "Dancer. Used to be." "Let me guess. Contemporary. Freestyle." He tilted his head. "You know your styles." "I was a dancer too. Once." That once hung heavy between them. But Jalen didn't flinch. "I bet the rhythm's still in you." Grace had blinked. No one, not her therapists, not her friends who slowly stopped texting, had said that to her in over a year. Days passed, then weeks. Their conversations became longer, more natural. From morning drives to PT, to late afternoon rides from the private conservatory where she liked to sit by the mirror and watch others dance. He never pried. He never pitted. He simply saw her as more than a patient, more than a fallen promise. One Wednesday, while they waited for her father to finish a boardroom call that had run 2 hours over, Grace looked at Jalen in the rearview mirror and said, "What would you do if you couldn't dance anymore?" He thought about it. "I guess I'd teach people to hear music again, even if they couldn't move." And what if they couldn't feel the music either? He turned, meeting her eyes. "Then I'd remind them that feeling doesn't always start in your feet." She exhaled, shaky. "Do you ever miss who you were before?" "All the time," he said. "But I like who I'm becoming more." That night, Grace sat in the indoor courtyard beneath the atrium, the only room in the house where the ceiling opened, letting the stars peek in. She watched videos of her old performances on mute. Jalen passed by once. Only once. Saw the screen, saw her frozen, then kept walking without a word. But the next morning, when she came down for breakfast, there was a small Bluetooth speaker waiting in her chair. A sticky note taped to it read, "You don't need legs to move people." She blinked at it for a full minute, then smiled. The first time it happened, it wasn't dancing, not really. Jalen had been humming something while pushing her chair toward the conservatory. A tune she half remembered from a competition back when she was 15. Something slow, mournful, yet full of soul. "Stop," she said. He froze. "Play that again." He pulled his phone out, found the instrumental version, hit play. She listened. Her fingers started moving. Then her shoulders. Her arms traced the beat midair. Jalen stepped back, watched, waited. Then, slowly, subtly, he began to move too. Not big movements. Nothing theatrical. Just rhythm. And for the first time in over a year, Grace felt her body follow something instead of fight against it. Of course, it wasn't long before someone saw them. Someone with a phone. And of course, the video made its way to Alexander Whitmore. No warning. No context. Just 30 seconds of his daughter, his paralyzed daughter, moving her body in perfect coordination with a young black man who was supposed to be a driver. Alexander stood in his office at midnight, eyes fixed on the screen, veins tight with confusion. Then rage. Then something else. He didn't recognize it, but he knew one thing. By morning, he would find out exactly what was happening. Alexander Whitmore didn't sleep that night. He rarely did these days, though few knew that. To the world, he was still the unshakable titan of industry, the man whose tech empire reshaped the way people communicated, moved, and paid for nearly everything. But behind his glass walls and guarded estate, Alexander was a man undone by a single truth. His only daughter no longer looked him in the eyes the way she used to. And now there was this video. Grainy, but unmistakable. His daughter swaying gently in her wheelchair, arms moving with grace and intention. Her face open, bright. And beside her, Jalen Carter, the new driver, a man Alexander barely remembered approving, mirroring her movements with casual familiarity, like they'd done this before. Worse than the dancing was the smile on her face. It wasn't polite. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. And it was the first time he'd seen it in over a year. At exactly 7:01 a.m., Jalen was summoned to the study. He arrived in uniform, shoulders squared, eyes calm, the same demeanor that had gotten him hired in the first place. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt it, the charged stillness of a man who didn't like surprises. Alexander stood by the window, phone in hand. "I suppose you've seen this," he said, holding the screen without turning. Jalen nodded once. "Yes, sir." And it wasn't meant for an audience. Alexander finally turned. His jaw was tight, but his voice remained measured, too measured. "You're a driver, Mr. Carter, not a therapist, not a dance instructor, and certainly not someone who should be leading my daughter into public exposure that she has neither consented to nor prepared for." Jalen paused, choosing his words like stepping across glass. "With respect, sir, she was leading me." There was silence, dense, unflinching. Alexander stepped forward. "You're employed to protect her, not indulge her in fantasies." "She wasn't fantasizing," Jalen said, voice low but steady. "She was remembering. Reclaiming." "Reclaiming what?" Alexander's voice rose, sharp now. "She can't walk. She won't dance again. And you," he narrowed his eyes, "you don't get to give her hope you can't deliver on." For a moment, Jalen said nothing. Then, with quiet force, "I didn't give her hope. She already had it. I just reminded her it still had room to stretch." Alexander froze. Something flickered behind his eyes, not rage this time, but pain. Deep, raw, and dangerously close to the surface. Then he spoke, softer but colder. "You're dismissed for the day. We'll speak again tomorrow." Jalen nodded, jaw tight. He didn't slam the door, but the air felt heavier when he left. Later that day, Grace found her father in the conservatory, the same place the video had been taken. She rolled in without a word, watching as he pretended to be studying the vines beyond the glass. "Are you firing him?" she asked. Alexander turned slightly, not surprised to see her. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you've forgotten what boundaries are." She laughed, bitter. "I'm not the one who installed cameras in every room. They're for safety. They're for control," she interrupted. "You want to track me like an algorithm. But I'm not one of your devices, Dad. I'm not a product." His eyes darkened. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" "Joy. Movement. The one person in this house who doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass." He flinched at that. "I saw the video," she said quietly. "And for once, I didn't hate what I saw." "Grace." "No, Listen to me." Her voice cracked but didn't falter. "You spend so much time trying to fix me, you haven't noticed that I'm living again. Slowly, carefully, but living. And you're going to ruin it if you keep trying to control every breath I take." Alexander looked at her for a long time. Then he sat down, heavily, across from her. "I lost you once already," he said. "In that hospital. I don't think I could survive it again." Grace reached out and took his hand, surprising them both. "Then maybe," she said gently, "you need to stop trying to preserve who I was and start seeing who I'm becoming." That night, Alexander stood in the doorway of the children's dance conservatory where Grace used to rehearse. The room hadn't changed, still polished floors, still the mirrored walls, still the ghost of her footsteps lingering like perfume. He thought of Jalen, of his daughter's laugh, and of the haunting truth that maybe, just maybe, the greatest gift he could give her now wasn't protection, but permission. The email came in on a Friday morning. It was from the Valley Youth Arts Center, a nonprofit Grace had supported in her pre-accident life. Once upon a time when ballet slippers were second skin and weekends were dominated by recitals, auditions, and the clean ache of muscles that meant she'd done something extraordinary. They were hosting a small public showcase. Music, movement, storytelling, open to anyone who had once been part of the center's community. Grace read it twice, then forwarded it to Jalen. Attached was a single sentence. "Would you dance with me in front of people?" Jalen arrived in the conservatory that afternoon holding his answer in the form of an old boombox, the same one he used to teach with at the Community Rec Center in Oakland. "No stage lights," he said. "No choreography. Just the music and you." Grace smiled, wheeling herself to the center of the floor. "That's all I want." For the next 6 days, they rehearsed. No one else knew. Not Mrs. Keller, not the house staff, and definitely not Alexander. The twins from the neighboring estate once peeked through the greenhouse glass and saw them. Grace twirling her arms, tilting her head in rhythm as Jalen mirrored her movements like a moon pulled by its tide. But they never told a soul. Grace hadn't moved like this in over a year, and she had never moved like this without legs. But every time she extended her arms and felt the weightlessness of expression return to her body, something inside her unfurled. Her gestures sharpened. Her breaths matched the beat. She wasn't pretending to dance. She was dancing. Jalen never tried to lead. He simply followed where she was brave enough to go. The showcase was held at a modest amphitheater downtown. Outdoor seating, warm string lights, a gently buzzing crowd of about 100. Grace arrived in a navy blue wrap dress, her hair braided up like a crown. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't need to. Jalen wore all black, with just a small white rose pin to his chest, Grace's idea. They weren't on the program, which was exactly the point. When the host announced an impromptu expression piece from two very familiar faces, a few in the audience murmured. Grace had once been the center's shining star, and many still remembered the accident, the long silence that followed. The music began, soft, low strings, building into piano chords. Then came Grace, wheeling herself out beneath the lights, and the audience held its breath. They moved together, her arms slicing gently through the air, her hands shaping emotion in ways words never could. Jalen didn't crowd her. He orbited, responding, giving her the visual contrast that made her motion shine brighter. At one point, she spun the chair slowly, her upper body tilting, her eyes closed as though the sky above had opened just for her. And in the second row, Alexander Whitmore sat frozen. He hadn't planned to come, but a staffer had mentioned some event downtown, and curiosity, or maybe something deeper, had brought him there. Now he couldn't move, not because she was dancing, but because for the first time in months, she was herself again. And more than that, she was free. After the piece ended, there was a long pause. Then an eruption of applause, shouts, even tears. Grace didn't look to the crowd. She looked to Jalen. They didn't bow. They didn't need to. They simply left the stage, side by side, into the wings. Outside, after the show, they sat on a low bench behind the building, sipping lemon water and watching the moonlight catch on passing cars. "Thank you," she said. Jalen shrugged. "You did the hard part." "I did the easy part," she countered. "You're the one who believed in me before I did." He was quiet a moment. Then, "I didn't believe for you. I just waited until you caught up to what I already saw." That night, Alexander knocked on her bedroom door. When Grace answered, he stood awkwardly, holding something in his hand. "I found this," he said, extending a dusty box. She opened it. Inside, her old ballet shoes, the satin frayed, the toe pads worn. And beneath them, a small framed photo of her at age 10, mid-leap, frozen in the air like she belonged to it. "I kept meaning to donate it," he said, "but I couldn't." Grace looked up. "I'm proud of you," he said. And this time, she didn't look away. She reached out, took his hand. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. He nodded. "I'll be at the next one." It started with a blurry clip from someone in the third row. A vertical phone video, shaky at times, but clear enough to see the moment when Grace lifted her arms to the stars and the crowd fell silent, as if caught in the breath between two heartbeats. The caption was simple: "She's paralyzed." And she danced. Within 12 hours, the video had hit 3 million views. By the end of the next day, it was 15 million. News outlets scrambled for the story. Headlines cropped up on major platforms. "Daughter of billionaire Alexander Whitmore returns to stage in viral performance." Talk shows debated the significance of her movement. Was it dance? Was it therapy? Was it both? While bloggers dissected every second of her gestures like scholars poring over sacred text. But what no one expected, what truly set the internet ablaze, was the man dancing beside her. Not her father, not a celebrity, just a black man in all black, with a quiet presence and expressive grace. Someone who moved like music lived in his spine. And suddenly, the world wanted to know, who is he? Jalen didn't speak to the press. He didn't answer DMs. He didn't capitalize. He went back to driving Grace to her therapy sessions, back to walking the estate's shaded trails, back to leaving her favorite tea steeping just long enough that the flavor always hit just right. He didn't need the spotlight, but the spotlight followed anyway. Within days, someone posted an old video, Jalen, at 19, leading a dance therapy session at an underfunded youth center in Oakland. The caption read, "He's been doing this for a long time." The public swooned. They called him the movement whisperer, Grace's guardian, the gentleman who danced with her soul. Alexander was careful not to speak publicly. When a Forbes reporter reached out for comment, he simply replied. That moment was not about business. It was about freedom. But behind the scenes, things were changing. Sponsors called. Foundations offered funding. An entire community began to swell behind Grace's story, not as a tragedy, but as a beacon. And Grace? She was scared, not of fame, but of expectation. "I didn't do it for them," she told Jalen one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. They were sitting in the garden, lanterns flickering around them, the scent of jasmine drifting through the dusk. "I know," he said. "I did it for me." He nodded. "But what if they want me to become something I'm not ready to be again?" Jalen leaned forward. "Then you remind them you're still writing your own script." Grace exhaled, slow and heavy. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he admitted. "But it's simple." She tilted her head. "That doesn't make any sense." He smiled. "Exactly." 2 days later, an invitation arrived. The Global Ability Arts Gala, held annually in New York, wanted Grace to perform, not just attend, but to open the show. A black tie event, thousands of attendees, millions of viewers, and one white envelope with golden script that sat on her lap like a dare. She showed it to her father. He read it, then looked up slowly. What do you want to do? For the first time in over a year, she answered without hesitation. I want to dance. That night, Jalen knocked on her door with something wrapped in brown paper. Inside, a pair of soft silk gloves, dyed the shade of her favorite rose. For your hands, he said, because they move more than most people's feet. Grace held them like a relic, tears rising. You're coming with me, right? Jalen didn't pause. If you'll have me. She laughed through her tears. You think I'd do this without you? But not everyone was happy. One particular message arrived via private email. No name, no signature, just, some people don't like what they see. You should be careful who you let near your daughter. Grace read it 3 times, then closed her laptop. She didn't tell her father. She didn't tell Jalen. But that night, as she sat in bed staring out into the night, the glow from the moon seemed just a little dimmer. The Global Ability Arts Gala was being held at Lincoln Center, a place where legends had stood beneath chandeliers and breathed rare air, the kind that only came with legacy, elegance, and quiet power. Grace Whitmore sat in the green room, hands wrapped in the silk gloves Jalen had gifted her heart thudding loud enough to drown out the quiet murmurs from the corridor. Her navy dress, custom-fitted, sleeveless, cascading over her chair like water, shimmered under the soft light. Her hair, braided high and adorned with tiny pearls, framed a face no longer dulled by fear, but sharpened by purpose. Across the room, Jalen adjusted his cuffs. His all-black suit was crisp, but his expression softer than velvet. You ready? He asked. Grace looked up at him, and something in her gaze, not doubt, not fear, but presence, met his like lightning meeting steel. I've never been readier for anything in my life. The stage was quiet, a single spotlight. Then Grace rolled out into it, slowly, deliberately, and let the hush settle. The music started, a new piece, one Jalen had composed with a local pianist. Sparse, soulful, each note like a question asked in the dark. Grace moved. Her arms opened like wings stretching for the first time. Her head tilted. Her breath became part of the rhythm. And then Jalen entered, not beside her, but behind her, invisible at first, letting her lead. Together, they painted air. At one point, she raised both arms as though pushing against the ceiling of the world, her body still below the waist, but her presence tall enough to touch the clouds. Then came the moment, the one no one expected. She stopped, turned her chair to face the audience, and spoke. I was told movement was something I'd never have again, she said, voice echoing. But movement isn't just steps. It's defiance. It's choosing to express when the world asks you to shrink. It's claiming space that was stolen. She turned toward Jalen, who stood behind her like a pillar, silent, still, steady. This man never told me I'd walk again. He reminded me that I didn't need to in order to rise. She looked back at the crowd. Tonight isn't about a comeback. It's about becoming. And then, silence. Not because no one cared, but because everyone was frozen. Then came the sound, a wave, starting softly in the back, swelling, then crashing forward, applause that turned into cheers, cheers into standing ovation, and standing into something else. Belief. In what was possible, in what they had just witnessed. In her. Backstage, Grace collapsed into Jalen's arms, not from exhaustion, but from relief. The good kind. The kind that only comes when you've laid your soul bare and found yourself stronger than before. Think they heard me? She whispered. He smiled. They're still echoing. That night, Alexander Whitmore posted a photo. No caption, just Grace, center stage, arms raised, face lit like a flame. And in the corner of the image, a tall, poised black man standing just behind her, hands at his sides, heart in his eyes.